Hi, welcome to another Writerly Witterings. Today we're talking books. First of all, I have had a few inquiries recently about which books are the most useful currently for investigating different periods. I have to admit that the guy I tend to turn to for almost all of my research currently is still Ian Mortimer, partly because his research is so flawless, but also because his writing is extremely accessible. When he has done any research, he's exceptionally good at putting across what it is that he's discovered. Medieval intrigue is particularly useful for me right now, writing book number 33 in the Templar series, because I needed to get much more in depth into what actually happened at the time of Edward II's escape from Berkeley Castle. A lot of historians will say, but he didn't escape from Berkeley Castle. Well, I think you're wrong. I think he did. I think that the evidence that Edward II escaped from Berkeley and made his way to Italy over time is pretty much irrefutable now. The only people who argue the case are people who have built up their entire historical careers with the acceptance that Edward II died early in England in Berkeley Castle. I think it has to be twaddle, quite honestly. The next book I'm writing, I've just been commissioned by Seven House to do another 2 books in the Bloody Mary series with Jack Blackjack, which is fun. I'm very, very glad that Seven House liked them, because Jack is such a disreputable, callow, foolish sort of a character. He reminds me so much of myself. Shouldn't say that, but still, hey-ho. So the next book that I'm looking at, this is volume 2, from the Devon and Cornwall Record Society. One of the great benefits about joining the Devon and Cornwall Record Society is that every year they bring out another book which is supremely useful to me. Talking about Jack Blackjack, the reign of the Tudors, early 1500s. I've got a whole bunch of names, characters and everything else from this book. Very, very handy. Thank you so much, Devon and Cornwall Record Society. So moving on from that, what have I been reading recently? Well, the first book I have to say is this, The Bookseller's Tale. Bookseller's Tale. Sorry, I apologise. By Anne Swinfen. I was not aware of Anne until I started having a conversation with her on the internet a little while ago. Delightful lady, very hard-working, and writes extremely well. So if you see a book by Anne Swinfen, very worthwhile buying it. I was about to say, in contrast, but I won't say that because that'd be rude. Every year, the Yeovil Community Arts Association, well, for the last 2 years anyway, have invited me to go and have a discussion with them where we talk about the shortlisted books for the Man Booker Prize. They pick a book at random and send it to authors and other people who are interested in reviewing the books for them. And then we discuss the books that we've read and say whether we think they'll win or not. This book was sent to me this year. It is Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. It is hugely imaginative. It is a wonderful conception. It is based on the death of Abe Lincoln's son at the beginning of the American Civil War. And what impact would that have had on Lincoln? I think that's what Saunders was trying to look at. So he was thinking, I've just lost my son. This is how appalling a tragedy it is for me. Think of all the other sons and fathers I'm sending out to get killed. And at the same time as Lincoln's boy Willie died, there was a fairly significant battle apparently where the Confederates did kill an awful lot of Union soldiers. So it was an interesting period, I would venture to suggest, for Abe Lincoln. Saunders has taken that basic concept and then considered what would have happened if Lincoln's son went into a kind of purgatory, the bardo. It's a Buddhist or Tibetan concept, I think, the bardo, in which it's a land where the spirits go before they're renewed and reborn. Obviously, they believe in reincarnation. All good. I like the idea of the story. I like the idea of the bardo. Not very much. It's not the sort of book I would have bought were it not for the Booker Prize sending it to me. But the difficulty with this book that I've got is it is so disjointed. It started off really well. The first few pages were excellent. It was first-person narrative talking about this guy, his marriage to a much younger woman, how he treated her, and it was good. It was really interesting. I was hooked. I wanted to continue. And then there were a couple of interruptions in his narrative. I don't know if you can see this here, but there's an interruption there and there and there. I thought, oh, that's interesting. So maybe it's a kind of stream of consciousness story. And then you go on and you have more. But it's not from that one viewpoint. The whole story is told from a number of different perspectives, each of them giving their own little few lines of conversation. You can see here how many lines there are. And the worst thing is that every now and again you have much longer sections. So you've got paragraphs. And when you've got those, here we go, we've got quite a few larger paragraphs there. When you have those paragraphs, you start reading it, but you cannot tell who's actually speaking. So your automatic reaction is to try to figure out who it is. Now, if you've got a film script or a theatrical script, you'd get the person's name, then the speech. In this, you get the speech, then at the very bottom, the person's name. So if you've got 2 pages of speech, you automatically flip the page and go down to the bottom of the page to figure out who it is who's actually talking, because the narrative, for me, did not have enough individuality. And also, if you've got 2 pages of speech and he hasn't introduced that character yet, it's deeply irritating. So I found this a very good concept, a really interesting idea, and a pain in the backside to read. Did not like it at all. I certainly won't go back to it again. See what you think. Knowing the way the Booker Prize goes, it'll probably win the flaming prize. Right, next book. This was sent to me by Corsair to review. Soot. It's written by a guy called Andrew Martin. It is a really interesting idea. You've got an artist who is murdered. He's one of those chaps who cuts out bits of paper and sticks them on a black background so you can see the silhouette of the character. And it involves an investigator who is, oddly enough, the author picked someone who's very interested in books. But what is impressive for me is the way that you get the feel for the period. It's always very difficult, I know, from personal experience, trying to get the right sort of atmosphere. This guy does it perfectly. I can thoroughly recommend this book. Really nicely done. And I have to say, the book itself is beautifully packaged. Look, black edging on the pages and really good cover. Clearly, Corsair has faith and believes in their author. It's worthwhile reading that. Last year, quite a few of you will remember that I reviewed a book, The Dry, by a lady called Jane Harper. It was a first-time novelist. I think she'd been a journalist or something before, but it was a really strong book, really interesting characters, very good scenery. An excellent piece of work. And so, of course, she's got another book. This is good. It's less imaginative, I would say. It's a very good story. Much of it told in flashback all the way through, so that you're actually led to the criminal in the last few pages, which is fine, that's not a problem. It's taken from a company which is being investigated by the police, and a whole bunch of the management and lower ranks are taken out on an adventure outward bound weekend when suddenly things go wrong. It is good. It's a very entertaining read. It's the sort of book that anyone could pick up and read all the way through it without any problem. I've read other books that are better conceived with dealing with outward bound events and so on. It's not as different and therefore as imaginative for me as The Dry, but even so, it's a good book worthwhile reading. So that's where I am currently. The next video I'm going to be doing will be once more on this weird and wonderful device. I've now had it for a month. It's been a very interesting month. This thing is 500 odd pounds. That's a lot of money. However, I like it. But you'll have to wait until next week to find out why. Hope that was interesting. Hope that was useful. If you want to see the last video, it'll be over here somewhere. And if you want to look at other things that are useful, they'll be over here somewhere too. If you want to find out what's going on in my life, don't forget to follow Writerly Witterings and my main website. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, or if you've got any suggestions for other videos you'd like to see, chuck your comments down the bottom there. And I will look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you very much. Take care. And now I'm going to go back to my coffee. Cheers.